this is the fine print that will be printed on parchment, sent out to the president in Hawaii to send. The president just landed. To answer your question about what it actually does, it delays those $110 billion in automatic spending cuts for 2 months, and then it includes some $600 billion in new taxes, mostly on the wealthy. When you include the payroll tax part of it, it does capture a big part of the middle class. Here's what it does for the wealthy. For individuals making $400,000, families, households $450,000, the top tax rate goes from 35 to 39.9%. Then estate taxes, 35 to 40%, but that doesn't kick in for estates that aren't over $5 million. Capital gains and dividends for the top earners, those go from 15% to 20%. They stay the same for everyone else. That's a big victory for the theory behind the Bush-era tax cuts. And then the AMT, the alternative minimum tax, that is indexed to inflation, that is taken care of once and for all. Elsewhere in their tax cut provisions, extends parts of the 2009 stimulus package, child tax credit expansion, the earned income tax credit, and the college tuition tax credit. The president fought hard for those. Let's break it down by income bracket, Eric. Average American who's making $50,000 a year, because of the payroll tax holiday expiring, this will mean around $1,000 in new taxes. You take the top 1%, those making more than $506,000, they will see a federal tax increase of $73,000. You take the 0.1%, those making above $2.6 million, federal tax increases around $443,000. Eric, it's important to note what the president got and what he didn't get. He didn't get anything. This is what Mr. Fink was talking about in terms of new money for the economy and slow GDP growth. Didn't get anything for more roads funding, and he certainly didn't get anything in the big stimulus picture. He also didn't take off that looming threat of the debt crisis.
Hans, if we may, let's talk about that in a little more detail. If you could look ahead to us, talk to us about what Congress has to deal with between now and that 2-month deadline that they set for themselves.
So there are two parts to the 2-month deadline. One, there's the sequester deadline, which is really piddly, right? That's basically now going to be $110 billion in automatic spending cuts. The bigger issue is the $16.4 trillion on the debt ceiling. That is something that Congress statutorily has to raise. The president signaled last night that he's not willing to negotiate on that. But frankly, he doesn't really have a choice, right? I mean, the president can say he doesn't want to negotiate. Congress says we're not going to raise it unless you give us spending cuts. I'm curious what Mr. Fink has to say about this. Secretary Geithner, he obviously has been staying under duress, you could say. Does Geithner need to stay, Mr. Fink, until they figure out what to do about the debt ceiling?
Well, I think the debt ceiling is a critical issue. I think foreigners are actually very disappointed in our results of last night. We don't want to have another episode like we had in August of 2011. I think this would be very damaging. It would increase even more the uncertainty that we have, and it would probably put the economy possibly into a recession in the first quarter. So. I think it's an important bargaining chip that Republicans may have, but I think it's a bargaining chip that nobody should be using. These are debts that we have. These were automatic when we had, no one even cared about the deficit ceilings and the debt ceilings, and this was just something that was automatic. In my 37 years, it just became, for the last year and a half, something that was politically charged. And we should go back to the structure of having the debt ceiling raised as our Congress approves our budget. These are the men and women who approve the budget, and then after they approve the budget, then they then go and say, well, we're not going to approve the spending of the budget we approved. So that's just Washington games. We should be moving on. But the key result will be, from the baseline of O&B, where we are at the moment, we're actually going to be increasing our debt over the next 10 years to greater than another $4 trillion. Now, that's the baseline, because they were budgeting in all the baseline, all the Bush tax cuts being exterminated, and we were going to have more savings. And importantly, we have not addressed all the issues that I've been talking about for the last year, and that's longevity, and how are we going to tackle entitlements. And so, for me, it's the debate has to be not about the debt ceiling. The debate has to be, how do we get the men and women in America to start thinking about their longevity?